Several times a week for the past 20 years, this man has inspected one of the finest bamboo groves in the world. The Fuji Bamboo Garden is home to 500 bamboo species from around the globe. And its director, Harutsuku Kashiwagi, feels respectful affection for every one of them. He likes to believe in a mysterious connection between the destiny of this plant and that of eternal Japan. Bamboo swords may have replaced steel blades, but the spirit of the samurai still haunts the bamboo grove whenever the kendo masters come to train here. Kashiwagi watches over every plant, on the lookout for any change. This morning, at the base of the leaves, he discovers tiny spikes. These dried spikelets are flowers. This is a very rare sight indeed, and Kashiwagi should be delighted. But ancient legends spring to his mind, old superstitions linking the flowering of the bamboo with imminent disaster. A few weeks later, the bamboo starts to wither, and its leaves begin to fall. Lacking all the precious chlorophyll in its foliage, the plant cannot use photosynthesis to capture the sun's energy.
This bamboo began to flower almost a year ago. It's starting to produce a lot of seeds. The flowering may last 2 or 3 years, or even longer.
One by one, the bamboo start to wither. The devastation worsens and threatens to spread throughout the entire plantation. On the lookout for the slightest clue, Kashiwagi wanders down the pathways of his fading garden. Why is the bamboo dying? One possibility occurs to him. Perhaps the groundwater table has been contaminated with pollutants. A preliminary examination reveals the soil is perfectly healthy. The thick carpet of humus makes ideal compost. The rich red ochre soil exudes moisture, and decomposing leaves recycle the silica that nourishes bamboo. In the warm light of the Japanese summer, new shoots appear not far from the dying canes. Their vitality belies Kashiwagi's suspicions. The mysterious plague has struck just one species of bamboo. Moreover, the scourge affects only plants that have blossomed. Similar events have sometimes occurred elsewhere in the world, where bamboos are found to have died shortly after flowering. Coincidence? Andrew Benton is not so sure. The young British scientist has worked in Beijing for the past 2 years. He is convinced that bamboo is an exceptional raw material that can be an economic boon to many impoverished areas. But around the world, entire bamboo forests perish regularly. For the communities involved, their death is always catastrophic. At the headquarters of the International Network for Bamboo and Rattan, Benton inventories flowerings around the world.
The flowering of some bamboos is really quite unique. There's all sorts of intricacies and all sorts of things that nobody knows. All sorts of questions that you need to answer.
Bamboo is found in just about every part of the world now, but for many people, it remains an enigma. Seeing these majestic forests with their hard, woody stems soaring more than 40 meters into the air, who would guess the bamboo is not a tree, but a grass? A member of the Gramineae family, just like rice and wheat. But a threat looms over this vast grassland, and it could all disappear within a few months. Benton works to enlarge his database in a desperate search for the culprit responsible for the plant's death. This morning, an unexpected event brings him a few steps closer to the truth. A message arrives from India announcing an exceptional flowering. In the state of Karnataka, in the forest of Chikmagalur, an area covering more than 500 square kilometers, the bamboo is flowering. Chikmagalur in southwest India. The crisis began a few months ago, throwing the entire population into a state of panic. As in Japan, flowering is met with dread. Ancestral beliefs foretell misery and desolation as soon as the first inflorescences appear. These flowers of evil are to be feared, for they presage earthquakes, floods, and cataclysms. To fend off impending disaster, men and women march in procession and offer up prayers and gifts to the gods. Palms are joined together in supplication. This morning, Dr. Narayan Adkoli, INBAR's correspondent in India, arrives to witness firsthand the incredible event. A bamboo specialist for more than 15 years, he has never yet seen a flowering.
This big bamboo flowering again. This time I'm lucky to be seeing it. That's what. Yeah, during my life cycle, I don't think I'll see one more. That's what. So this is something unique.
Narayan quickly assesses the magnitude of the disaster. A receiving line of withered and blackened stems offers him a grim welcome. The forest of Chikmagalur is dying, and these thousands of hectares of bamboo all belong to the same species, Bambusa bambos.
Here you can see, sir, this is not flowered, and the other one is flowered last year.
This vast forest of iron grass suddenly seems very frail. Despite appearances, could the bamboo be really so fragile that the slightest shock, including an energy-intensive effort such as flowering, would be more than it could stand? If so, this could explain the slaughter of the giant grass. At the Institute of Wood Science and Technology in Karnataka's capital city, the team of Dr. Vientra Rao has spent the last few years studying the relative strength of various species. Here, wood is constantly weighed, measured, and tested. Unlike the massive woody trunk of a tree, the bamboo stem is hollow. Yet when submitted to hardness tests, each square centimeter of bamboo supports a weight of 1,000 kilograms. Bamboo is exceptionally strong, even stronger than steel. This is why in the streets of Bangalore, the modest homes are built on thick bamboo canes planted deep in the earth. But it is in Hong Kong, among the towers of glass and steel, that bamboo reveals its true colors.
Bamboo is a very old material, and it's very easy to use. It's light, it's cheap. Because it's so easy to use, it's still being used. It's fairly common around Asia. It's one of the Asian ways of working. I'd imagine it's going to be around for some time, yeah, it's not going to be completely replaced by, say, more Western methods, not in the immediate future.
In this modern metropolis, scaffolding is still built with bamboo, not because it is traditional, but because it is strong, very strong. The third tallest tower in Hong Kong is constructed with the help of the iron grass. In tropical climates, bamboo is safer to use than metal because it is not vulnerable to humidity. Moreover, it stands up to the violent storms that regularly batter the coast and sweep up metal structures, reducing them to bits of dust. The hypothesis that bamboo is intrinsically fragile is thus laid to rest. The explanation for the deaths of the Chikmagalur bamboo must be found elsewhere. One by one, men uproot the stalks before they become completely unusable. Soon, they will be too dry and brittle for either building construction or the making of household objects. They race against the clock to salvage everything possible. When bamboo flowering affects just individual plants, it is said to be sporadic. But here in Chikmagalur, all members of the same species are flowering at the same time. This type of flowering, known as gregarious, leaves scientists searching for an explanation. They have suggested that bamboo send messages to each other to synchronize their flowering, a theory that is far from absurd. In the 1980s, in the South African Transvaal, a mysterious aggressor began to slaughter kudus, large antelopes that roam the savanna. It took researchers years to expose the culprit, the acacia tree. To protect itself from these insatiable herbivores, the acacia set in motion an extraordinary defense mechanism. When attacked by kudus, the tree would alert its neighbors of the danger with an olfactory signal. The tannin levels in their leaves rose to the point where they became inedible. 20 years later, in Jena, Germany, Ian Baldwin is on the point of proving that plants can communicate. And not just acacias, but everyday species such as peas, sage, and tobacco.
Many plants in a natural environment are connected together, not necessarily through their own roots, but through this fungal net called the mycorrhizal net. And these mycorrhizae are sort of like a telephone company. They hook up everybody. And everybody's hooked together through the same sort of net. And so lots of signals could be going on below ground, connecting plants that are different species or even fairly far apart. So there's a lot to be understood in terms of the mechanism of the signaling.
But in India, experiments have shown that messages are not transmitted from one bamboo to another. At Kohli wonders if the bamboo has actually been leading scientists down the garden path. They have assumed that flowering is part of the dying process. But what if it is actually the cause? Perhaps there is an unknown mechanism that links the two phenomena. As when some insects die immediately after reproducing, perhaps the tree has no reason to live once it is flowered. To test this hypothesis, the botanist will need samples of dried stalks, or culms, as well as healthy ones. To find them, he plunges deep into the forest in search of still green specimens.
Now, come here. See, my idea is to collect samples. So what you have to do for me is bring the elephant to take this from the south.
Even in death, the bamboo remains strong. The elephant struggles to remove the tough, woody stems. With these samples, Ecology will be able to conduct more in-depth analysis and perhaps solve the mystery of the dying bamboo. To carry out the tests, Dr. Adkoli sends the samples to the Department of Cellular Biology at Bangalore's Institute of Wood Science. The samples must first be carefully prepared. Tiny pieces are removed and tenderized in boiling water. Very thin bamboo sections are placed on glass slides. The isolated bamboo cells are then dyed for easier examination under a microscope.
In the
end, the two samples reveal their secret. The cells of the living bamboo contain substantial energy reserves that are lacking in the dead bamboo. It is these reserves that allow the plant to develop. Without them, the exhausted bamboo is condemned to certain death.
Leading to the production of flowering and
Dr. Adkoli was right. The flowering is indeed the cause of the bamboo's demise,
resulting in the death of the bamboo.
This graceful plant will not withstand the formation of the yellow flowers that adorn its immense, fast-growing spikes. In the Agave americana, called century plant, as in bamboo, flowering is fatal. Both plants are monocarpic, meaning they bear fruit only once and then die. Such plants use all their energy reserves to produce flowers and then seeds. Unable to recover from the effort, they die. Thousands of kilometers from India and Japan, a similar drama has played out in the past. Janine Galzin, the longtime owner of the Prefrance Bamboo Garden, recalls the tragedy.
This is the section of bamboo on both sides that flowered in 1963. We had to cut everything down because when the bamboo flower, that's their swan song. It was really terrible. There was the dirt and nothing else. 2 entire hectares.
There is still a lot to be learned about bamboo. Why, for example, is the life cycle of this plant so unpredictable? Why does its life expectancy vary from one species to another? In his Beijing office, Andrew Benton continues his investigation. There are still many mysteries to unravel.
I think it was the plight of the panda that brought bamboo flowering to the attentions of most of the people in the West. And it certainly brought it to my attention.
1976. Two of the major bamboo species in the Chinese province of Sichuan flower and die. A short time later, 138 giant pandas die within a few months of each other. Victims of the sudden disappearance of the bamboo, the panda's staple diet, which flowering makes it impossible for them to eat. Since then, Dr. Jun Miao and his team have been doing intensive research to try to recreate the panda's original habitat.
In general, on a mountain or a chain of mountains, bamboo species are relatively numerous. One species may flower, but others will not have reached that stage. Pandas can migrate over a large area, so they're able to go elsewhere to find bamboo. But the intensification of human activities had an impact on the pandas. The construction of roads and human economic activities has divided panda populations into small communities.
With their habitat fragmented, making it impossible for them to migrate with the changing seasons or search for healthy bamboo, pandas cannot find enough to eat. For the last remaining representatives of this endangered species living in the wild, the threat is permanent. Time is running out for them, and Benton knows it.
There are two main aims of the database. The first is to use it as a scientific tool to enable us to analyze bamboo flowering behavior. And the second, and probably the most important, is to be able to provide people with advance warning that bamboo flowering is going to happen. In many parts of the world, people's livelihoods are completely dependent on the bamboo resource, and flowering and death results in the loss of their livelihoods.
Pandas are not the only ones living under a death sentence. When a bamboo grove dies, hundreds of men, women, and children watch helplessly as their primary means of livelihood disappears. Under normal conditions, this pulp mill near Chikmagalur provides employment for some 100 workers, but the bamboo has stopped arriving, and their jobs are threatened. After a wait of several hours, a few trucks finally arrive, but they will be the last for a long time. The columns are now too dry and too brittle to be of any use. Bamboo is a vital resource for all the peoples of the Far East. Strong, inexpensive, and fast-growing, it is the wood of the poor, employed in all aspects of daily life. In this Indian village, fresh green poles are split and stripped into thin ribbons. Skillful hands dart in and out, deftly weaving the ribbons into large baskets. Elsewhere, the bamboo canes are cut into lengths. In a thick cloud of sawdust, fine slats are cut from the woody portion of the plant. Dried in the sun and varnished, they will be used to make floors as well as beds and armchairs. Bamboo is also used in Asian cooking. In this packing plant, the pounding of the chopping blocks can still be heard, but for how long? The tender young shoots, known as turians, are cooked and peeled. The tough woody outer layer is removed, and the insides plunged into a final steam bath. Prepared in this way, bamboo shoots form the basis of many traditional dishes enjoyed by the Chinese. Stir-fried quickly at a high heat, the crisp, tender shoots soak up the flavors of the spices while retaining their own special taste, reminiscent of corn. Andrew Benton continues to track the flowering of bamboo groves around the world. Each of the 1,300 species seem to dance to their own drummer.
The flowering of some bamboos is really quite unique. Some of the species live for long, long periods of time and effectively commit suicide after perhaps 60 years or something, because they flower, they set seed, and they die. And they are then replaced by the new seedling generation.
Blossoming and dying is thus the normal cycle for bamboo. But while the seeds that fall to the ground after every flowering ensure its regeneration, the end of each cycle is still catastrophic. In the fall, stems begin to form underground, setting in place all the elements for future growth. Then, suddenly, they break through the surface and begin to shoot up at a rate of several centimeters a day. Bamboos hold the world record for plant growth. The development of some species is even visible to the naked eye. The Philostachys edulis, for example, grows almost 7 centimeters an hour. But in the forest of Chikmagalur, where the first shoots are starting to appear, it will be years before the young culms are hard enough to be used.
So what is now seeded, well, naturally it dies, it throws the seeds below, germination will start. And then you can have, the seedlings coming up like this. And if we protect them, that itself year after year, it will grow, and maybe 6 or 7 years, we have again the fresh clump coming from.
6 or 7 years if all goes well, but that is far from guaranteed. Already, thousands of seeds needed for the regeneration of the forest have been eaten by rodents. The people here have not forgotten the terrible invasion in the state of Mizoram to the north in the 1960s. Rats devoured all of the seeds before attacking the crops and provoking a devastating famine. Here, once again, the flowering of the bamboo heralds misfortune. India is hit with an exceptional drought that ruins crops, and humans must compete with animals for the precious bamboo seeds, which are more nutritious than rice. More seeds that will not be available to regenerate the species. Agile hands set to work separating seeds from their husks, and clouds of chaff pour down from the sifters. The future of the forest is at risk. As night falls, children raised in an atmosphere of fear and superstition invent charms and spells. Small seeds become instruments for strange incantations, spell books from which children draw their magic. But carefree play has no place when a community is fighting for survival. The mahout that guards the forest knows that every seed lost is a clump of bamboo that will not be reborn. The children are scolded for their foolish games. Bangalore, the capital of Karnataka. 5 million inhabitants start their new day. It is still early, but the city already teems with activity. Here, more than 200 kilometers from the forest of Chikmagalur, a new disaster is in the making. The majestic ramparts of bamboo that guard the botanical garden have been hit with a calamity identical to the one that destroyed the forest of Chikmagalur. Alerted by the garden's director, Ecology discovers the source of the problem. The bambusa bambos has begun to flower. Bangalore, Chikmagalur. The simultaneous flowering of two populations of the same species, hundreds of kilometers apart, adds a new dimension to the puzzle. Ecology is determined to get to the bottom of it. He wonders about the origin of these plants. Did they come from the forest? Might they be related to the bamboo of Chikmagalur? If they are twins, that could explain their identical life cycles. The branches will have to undergo a paternity test. But that kind of testing can be done only in Japan, in the lab of Dr. Yuji Isagi. Bamboo of the same species in different parts of the world, separated by oceans and mountains and in different climates, all blossoming at the same time. Prestigious bamboo groves in Japan and France have reported similar experiences.
This bamboo is called Madaki, and its scientific name is Philostachys bambusoides. It is very common in this area. It began to flower in Japan in 1961, and at almost the same time, Madaki began to flower in the Provence bamboo garden in southern France.
It happened all over the world at the same time, and I received letters from different places, Africa and Asia, asking me what to do. I was astonished to receive those letters, because I thought that, at least in Asia, people would know how to handle it. And the only thing I could tell them was to cut. Cut and wait for it to grow back.
Harutsugu Kashiwagi seeks an explanation for this strange phenomenon.
We're not sure if the Madaki in the French garden comes from China or Japan. But since they flowered at the same time as the Madaki in Japan, I think the plant in France came from the same clone. They must all be related.
Clones. Like Narayan Adkuli, Harutsugu Kashiwagi thinks the plants must be genetically identical. If both men have reached the same conclusion, it is because they know the vast majority of bamboo groves are created through the transplanting of rhizomes. These thick underground stems form nodes from which a complex system of roots and branches develop, and each length of rhizome carries within it the same genetic inheritance as the rest of the plant. Kashiwagi searches for proof of his theory in the library of the Fuji Bamboo Garden. Unfortunately, there are no records of the arrival of the Madake bamboo at the garden. There is no way for Kashiwagi to confirm his hypothesis. The Provence bamboo plantation was created near Anduze in 1855 by Eugène Mazel, a wealthy merchant with a passion for bamboo. Unfortunately, the Provence archives burned down a few years ago, and there are no records indicating the source of the original bamboo.
He imported spices from the Far East, and so introduced many plants from Asia. I found evidence of all that in this book. He no doubt imported the bamboo through the same channels.
China, the birthplace of bamboo. Many species were born in the foothills of these mountains. Bamboo has many small leaves and so perspires a great deal. Without water, it cannot survive. In this suffocating heat, the canes grow best near running water. In southern Sichuan is the Bamboo Sea, where the giant grass covers almost 70,000 hectares. Here, bamboo plays a vital role in the life of the people. The Philostachus species originated in these vast Chinese forests. The bamboos admired in the gardens of France and Japan very likely came from this continent. A single branch torn by traveling merchants from Chinese soil would have been enough to launch new dynasties overseas. But how can this common heritage be proven? At the University of Hiroshima, Ecology samples have finally arrived. To determine once and for all if the canes from Chikmagalur forest are the twins of those in Bangalore's botanical garden, their genetic code must be deciphered. A piece of cane is ground up and submitted to the action of a detergent that breaks down the cell walls and nuclear membrane, releasing the plant's DNA. The results obtained by Isagi are disconcerting. The two bamboo samples do not share the same DNA and are thus not clones. Once again, a promising theory must be rejected.
Two bamboos that are clones will inevitably flower at the same time. But two bamboos that flower at the same time are not necessarily clones.
The answer to this puzzle is therefore not to be found in the plant's DNA. These amazingly strong grasses, which bend but never break, must have a weak point. But where is it? For how much longer must communities continue to suffer the consequences of bamboo flowerings? Every passing day is a reprieve for the thousands of people who fear the loss of their bamboo groves. Henceforth, every botanical garden and every nursery keeps complete records of their specimens. At the Prat-France Bamboo Garden, an extremely precise computerized fact sheet has been developed, an invaluable tool for the advancement of research. Thanks to thousands of bits of information sent to him from around the world, Benton's database is beginning to deliver up its secrets. Between the lines of this endless stream of names and dates, patterns are beginning to emerge, but patterns of incredible complexity.
この竹は四角い竹です。学名はテトラゴノカラムスクワダンガリスと言いますが、中国原産の竹です。
We think it arrived in Japan
この竹は今から500年以上前に中国から日本に来たと思われておりますが、それ以来
Since that time, it has never flowered, so it must have a very long cycle.
ですからこの竹の花はですね、
Whatever it may be, its flowering cycle is longer than 500 years.
The disparity in the flowering cycles of the various species complicates the work of the scientists. Yellow, green, thick, thin, speckled, mottled, or finely grooved, each bamboo species has a different appearance and a different flowering cycle that can sometimes be very long, 30, 60, 80, or even 120 years. Benton aims to draw up a timetable for every one of them.
By being able to predict that the flowering is going to take place, people will be able to think of strategies whereby they can protect the loss of their livelihoods. So we can think of things like we can introduce new bamboo species.
Advancing knowledge about the diversity of bamboo cycles is beginning to pay off. By combining plants with very different cycles in the same region, researchers can prevent the flowering of entire plantations and thus the ruination of bamboo-dependent communities. In India, the team of Dr. Trilak Rathore tirelessly selects and propagates different bamboo species.
We collect the seeds from the selected area, and after collection we do the processing, one aspect. Second one is a proper plan for replanting so that a bioresource can be maintained.
Each of these cuttings will give rise to new bamboo groves, whose diversity will ensure their survival. Discoveries concerning bamboo cycles have given new hope to Dr. Liao. He now knows the way to save China's last great pandas is to create a varied ecosystem. In this forest, each bamboo stalk is chosen with the greatest care based on specific criteria. In the capital of Sichuan province, the Panda Research Center has been working for 15 years to protect this national treasure. It incorporates a research lab where panda nutrition and reproduction are studied, as well as a veterinary hospital. Here in a biotope covering almost 40 hectares, Liao's team works with a living laboratory of 35 pandas. Each bamboo species brought from the forest is submitted to a taste test. Giant pandas spend up to 16 hours a day consuming 9 to 18 kilograms of bamboo. To grasp the stalks, they use a modified wrist bone that functions like an opposable thumb. They crush and chew the stems and leaves using specially adapted teeth to peel off the tough outer layers and reveal the soft inner tissue. Bamboo species that pass the panda taste test are replanted to the research center. The giant pandas are thus out of the woods for now. But for how much longer? These solutions are only stopgap measures, for the bamboo continues to flower and die. The diabolical precision of the bamboo cycles has never been explained. They seem to be able to measure time. Do they have some strange power we do not yet understand?
It seems highly likely that in some species, such as the Melocana bacifera in northeast India, that they do have some form of internal means of measuring time. Very likely something genetic, I would think. Obviously, it's not something anyone's been able to determine at the moment.
This is the miracle of the bamboo. It is equipped with one of the most accurate biological clocks in the living world. Each cell knows exactly when the plant germinated, when it will flower, and when it is programmed to die.
But that really is the only way that one can explain the very, very regular periodicity of flowering of that species in the northeast of India. It's possible to evaluate environmental impacts, weather, climate, all these sorts of things on bamboo flowering. But so far, nobody's been able to show that it really has any impact at all. So my own feeling is that some species probably do have some means of measuring time.
Soon, we will have a better understanding of the inner workings of this extraordinary biological clock. Deep within its cells, we will find its unusual ability to measure time, an ability shared with the rest of the living world. We will thus learn more about how our own cells count down our days, our hours, and our minutes. For there is only one great book of life, where the chapter on plants tells our own story as much as theirs.